Sakuigo, everybody, and welcome to Cassus Café. I am Ankin Cassus, your host, and with me today, as usual, are Captain,
Hello.
Kleina,
Hi.
and Tykoth. Wow, we're going to be reviewing Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 3. What do you guys think?
I mean, for me, right off the bat, I think this episode entirely depends on what you want and your personal taste in things. I can totally understand why people would have a negative reaction to this episode, and I can definitely understand why people like me would have a super positive reaction. So, yeah, I think it definitely depends on what your personal taste in media is, honestly.
I thought it was strange because I was here for the Mandalorian, not the whatever his name is show.
Yes.
Yeah,
and my reaction to like Boba Fett.
Yeah.
I very much criticized this choice, and I'm gonna be a hypocrite, and I'm not gonna criticize this choice here. But I do understand the criticism if you have that.
Yeah, so like the Mandalorian got Book of Boba Fetted.
I feel like I really enjoyed this. Like, I enjoyed this kind of episode. I liked this because it felt like Andor a little bit with the kind of like heisty type thing.
Yeah.
But I have to see the rest of the season to see how this plays into the show, to see if I really liked it in this show. I want to see how it plays into the rest of the season, because it could have just like, if this is just to tell us like what's been happening with this scientist dude, they could have just told us that in like a one sentence piece of dialogue.
In retrospective, it could make this episode significantly better or significantly worse, depending on how the rest of the season goes.
Yeah.
We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I was thinking, like, man, this would be a super great first episode of Rangers of the New Republic if they were still doing that show.
Yeah.
All right, Captain, have you got any thoughts for us?
Big picture thoughts?
Yeah, big
Yeah.
picture. Big picture.
I was doing my best to be polite and let everyone else go first.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so believe it or not, you all kind of collectively have summarized what I feel about this episode. On the one hand, it's called The Mandalorian, and we really didn't see that. And you got, like you said, Book of Boba Fett. The difference here is that I really enjoyed this side arc of somebody whose name is not Mando.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and that's why I'm really torn on this episode, because on one hand I like it, but the other hand I don't.
See, that's how I am. That's exactly how I am, because as a Mandalorian episode, I'm like, what's going on here? What is this?
Yeah.
But the way it was shot, the character arc, the slow pace, longer episode kind of stuff.
58 minutes.
Yeah, and like we only got 10 minutes of Mando, so.
Do you have it up? How long is the opening Mando sequence? Where does that end? Does anybody have that up or no?
I don't have it up.
I can get it up. Hold on a second.
While you're doing that, I'll just add on a little bit. What I really, without going into detail, this episode has more lore in it and world building for the sequel trilogy than the entire sequel trilogy in and itself.
I could see that.
Yeah, totally.
For sure.
We'll go more into that as we kind of pace through the episode, but that was my feeling coming out of this episode. I'm like, I feel like I got robbed, but at the same time, I also was like, I really enjoyed it. This doesn't work, but it works.
Yeah.
So the beginning part with Mando and the dogfighting, which we'll get into later, ends at 9:40.
That's shorter than I thought it was. It felt longer than that, but I guess in a good way.
Yeah. And the Mandalorian stuff at the end starts at 47:40.
So
Okay. It's probably
almost
15 minutes of stuff then, about.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah.
and about almost 40 with not Mando.
Oh yeah. When I first watched this episode, I was like, wow, this episode feels long, and that's not always a good thing. Because when it was going through all the Pershing stuff, I'm like, oh man, this is cool and all that. But the second viewing, when I rewatched it, it felt a lot faster. But that's usually what happens when I rewatch something, because I know what's about to happen. Things, story beats and scenes don't feel like they last as long as they do the first time you see them. But I don't know what to really think about that. My initial viewing, I would probably give in this episode a 5, but we'll get more into that later.
Yeah,
because it's changed a little bit.
I guess too. Just my last like big picture thought is the things I value and really look at are kind of the ethics and morality and feelings of the universe. And I do like what this contributed to. I always like when you dig into like who's evil, who's good, and that there really isn't an evil or good. There's somewhere in between. There's these really gray lines, like Andor, obviously that's the whole show. But this one dived into that a little bit, and I really loved that, kind of the New Republic versus Empire tactics.
Yeah.
And I just really dug that.
It reminds me of like the yin and the yang. There's always a little bit of evil inside of a lot of good, or a little good and a lot of evil. And I think this episode really highlights that very well.
Yeah.
Showcasing the few good people that were in the Empire but didn't really have a choice, and then the few evil things that are going on within a very largely good New Republic.
So what I'm hearing is Captain would definitely like Andor.
Yeah. This is Andor light. It's really good.
Yeah.
Andor light, but it is, it's a much less adult Andor, and it's good for it.
But yeah, and I have issues with it too. So, but we'll go into that.
Should we get into the episode?
Yeah, let's get into it. Nitty gritty. All right, first stuff with Mando and Bo. Freaking, I loved it. I was ear to ear smile the whole time. So you imagine my surprise when that gets completely shoved to the side after the title sequence.
Probably your first bad taste for you.
Yeah.
So I have actually a lot of geeky things to talk about in the opening 10 minutes.
Go for it.
I find it interesting that they kind of tease more about the creature that lurks beneath the water.
Yeah.
Did you see anything? No, not really. It's kind of falling.
Yeah. Which actually, sorry to butt in, but which actually kind of confirms my hypothesis, was that it didn't drag him down. He just fell because there was a crevice there that wasn't there before, and he just stepped off, and he was like a freaking rock that just sunk immediately. He's still in his armor and stuff. So
I found myself chuckling watching that bit of dialogue, because I immediately was thinking about our previous conversation about what happened. It was like, it's almost like the writers knew or was listening to us ahead of time, because we got the answer,
Yeah.
So I found that funny.
I don't know if what that says, if it's a good thing about us and being able to predict this kind of stuff, or if it's a bad thing towards the writing that it's so predictable. I don't know if we're just smart or they're stupid.
I also think that unpredictability doesn't equal good writing, and predictable doesn't mean bad writing.
Yeah,
I agree. I think it's more of, it could be if you're sitting there going, so wait, what happened? If you're kind of confused and you have to have dialogue to explain to your audience what just happened, might be an indication that perhaps it wasn't the best shot scene. For example, they could have had a shot in the water where he would have had his feet walking, and then it shows one step miss and fall through the crevice. That would have made it pretty clear that he fell and not got dragged down, because it looked like he got dragged down the first time I watched it.
Yeah.
Or they could be wanting us to not know whether it was that or not. That could be their intention, for us to not know.
Yeah, maybe.
I really need more Mythosaur.
Yep. I'm sure that's going to be a big part of Bo's storyline, though, is her dealing with finding out that Mythosaur is real, and that all this stuff that she was told as a kid, but she just thought was legend, is actually real.
Yeah, I think the biggest plot development in that was her not telling, Mando Din that it was there. Did you see it? No, and she kept it a secret. For some reason. Obviously, I think she wants to become the leader, or whatever that comes in the future. But yeah, that was kind of a big reveal, that she still holds secrets from him. They're not completely.
I think she partly doesn't want to admit that she was wrong either.
Yeah, and it could be that she's still processing it, and even if she's yeah, it's there, now what? She may be thinking it's probably best that I keep the secret under wraps until I can figure out what to do about it,
Yeah.
So she may be coming it from that perspective, there's this creature that was previously thought to be extinct, and I found it napping. It's been napping for a very long time, and didn't awake until I stumbled into its bedroom.
Yeah. It's a lot to process, and then they have other troubles after that soon to worry about anyway. So.
Yes, which is where I get a little bit nerdy on. So we have the whole fight scene of the ship combat. I really enjoyed this scene. They did a lot of subtle and maybe not so subtle things that I was like, yeah, that's how you would fight in atmosphere. I really liked how it was this particular move near the end where she reversed her thrusters, kind of like how Maverick did with the F-14, to flip the fighter around and shoot the person behind her. I was like, okay. I like that. That's how it works. Yeah, you know, a Star Wars version of that. That whole
dogfighting scene just felt so Top Gun to me, and it was so good. That was the part that I was just smiling ear to ear throughout the whole thing.
I was gonna say it felt a lot more grounded in like believability. You know, obviously it's Star Wars and you have sci-fi things in there, but there is always some things that you still have to deal with. Like gravity still exists in this realm. If you're not flying, you're falling, right? So there's certain things that stay consistent between our universe and the Star Wars universe. So to see those things recognized, unlike Episode 8, I really enjoyed that. I really liked the shot of Mando in the end one. After he took off, he went straight up. I was like, is he going to do what I think he's going to do? Because I would totally do this. And that was, he flew up, he turned off his thrusters and let gravity flip him around, which was another unique but also very realistic way of turning around. That is a move that's done in the real world. And when it comes to dogfighting, you use gravity to help you do a 180 turn. And he did it to completely, you know, defeat his opponent in the interceptor that was behind him. So yeah, really dig that.
Yeah, I like how they're doing it in Mando, especially that they're not these like superheroes. Like, I mean, they're fighting. How many fighters was it? Wasn't it like 4? It wasn't like an extreme. It was a pretty low amount.
It was like 6, I want to say. So
still nothing, not like insane, not like prequels or the sequels or something. And so I kind of like how it's subtle in how many they're trying to take down, and it's believable. And they're doing it successfully, but they're not like just destroying them. They're like
not Poe doing a flip and getting 7 TIE fighter shot in like 9 seconds fast.
Right. And I do love Poe, but that's not unreal. That's really unrealistic. So I do enjoy the groundedness of Mando. Is a very skilled pilot, there's no doubt, but it still takes some time to actually encounter and outmaneuver him. So I really like that.
Yeah, he even said that when he was in the gunner seat, see how long it took for him to shoot a TIE fighter down? TIE interceptor? Ray just like aims and kills 3, TIE fighters in one shot. Yes, I'm still salty about that. He was shooting from in space all the way down in an atmosphere practically before he got one, and he's like, these interceptors are a lot harder to take down. I'm like, yeah, I could believe that. That was the whole point of the interceptor model, right? The whole point was that they were supposed to be an improvement over the standard TIE fighter. So I really enjoy that they kind of lean into the lore properly like that.
And right after that, when you see the TIE bombers again, I feel like through the last several things, Andor and this, like TIE bombers are becoming like scarier.
or they've always been scary, but they've never been portrayed as such.
Yeah, they're being portrayed really, really frightening. Like how they just annihilate that thing with nothing, her base, and it's just really terrifying.
And you once again see the classic elements of dogfighting, right? Bombers are slow, they're quite defenseless in comparison to a fighter, right? So when they bombed her castle, she got angry. She was able to get behind them pretty quickly and took one down without breaking a sweat. She would have taken them all down if it wasn't for the fact that the armada of TIE interceptors that came in out of nowhere.
Yeah, and a pretty fitting strategy for the Empire to use those interceptors to distract, and then bombers go in while they're distracted, and it worked. It was effective.
It's exactly what was done in World War II. Fighters escorted their bombers, and we had heavy bombers carrying tons of munitions to bomb your opponent. So yeah, everything in here just clicked really well. Whoever wrote this whole sequence knew what they were writing about, and I applaud this person or people.
Dude, I felt so bad for Bo when they bombed her home, because it would be like, not again. You know?
At least it wasn't nuclear bombs this time.
It goes without saying, but I'm gonna say it anyway, that like it's also gorgeous. Like this season is on another tier of like the dogfighting like visuals. They're just amazing.
Yeah.
When they bombed Bo's home, sorry, can I go back to that real quick?
Yeah.
When they bombed Bo's home, I thought, man, they bombed that building. Luckily, there's nothing inside except that blanket left. That blanket and that throne. Because she has nothing else inside that castle.
I was thinking about the droid.
I am a little
Didn't the droid go with them on the ship?
No, I was the service droid, the one that actually like walks around and says,
Yeah,
"You
did she
have a
not go
visitor."
on the ship?
I thought it was just the. If he's on the ship, I don't remember seeing him on there. I just remember it was just the astromech, right? And Baby Yoda.
Could be.
I am a little sad. That means we might not get any more Bo-Katan seductive shots of her like leaning against the chair, just like posing for something. That's too bad, but oh well.
I did think one thing though in this sequence, and it's not directly related to the dogfighting part. I was sitting here going, normally when she flies, she has her helmet off. Why is she flying with her helmet on?
That's true.
That caught me my first time watching this. This is not like, hey, I know what happens and I noticed this. This was generally on the first time watching. I was like, why is she still wearing her helmet? She doesn't usually fly with her helmet.
Yeah, I was like, something's going on here.
I noticed that as well.
I don't know if she's like if she's playing 4D chess or what.
Well, even later, or excuse me, earlier in the episode, she kind of nags at him like, I guess that helmet's not coming off again. Says the person wearing their helmet has not taken it off since diving into the water yourself.
Do you think that's just kind of a mistake, or do you think that's like foreshadowing for the ending of this episode?
It feels like foreshadowing, or maybe like, oh, well, this is what we want, so she can't take off her helmet. Okay. And then there's the rest of us that are like, yeah, but normally she takes her helmet off when she flies. And I can imagine if you're flying in a spaceship, not having T-visor vision would probably be pretty helpful, which is probably why it makes sense. Even Django flew without his helmet on. It was just, it makes sense. You have the ship to protect you. You don't need a helmet. So yeah, I just am kind of foreshadowing the end of the episode, but I did notice it.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about it, but now that you say it, yeah, interesting.
I think that summarizes up to the point where
we get to the scientist.
They jump out of the system.
Yeah.
I want to say one thing. He gave her coordinates, and he's like, one place the Empire will never be, right? And I was like, yeah, I'm like, I wonder what that is. And then the next shot is Coruscant. And I went, I must admit, yeah, I don't think I'd be looking for, Mando there. Especially since it's being guarded by the New Republic. Yeah, I don't think I'd be chasing them there. As I kept watching, I kept expecting Mando to show up, and that's when I realized that Mando's not going to show up.
I didn't realize, because I stay away from spoilers, so I didn't realize we were going to go to Coruscant this episode. And
I didn't either.
Spoiler for you, no, Coruscant. Too late. You should have watched it. And so I was excited for Coruscant and Andor, but I think that this timeline, the post episode 6, is a much more interesting time for Coruscant. And so right off the bat, I didn't know, and I was just like really pumped to explore what that was even like during this time.
Yes.
Kind of been. There's some books and stuff, I'm sure, but nothing that I've really read into.
This goes back to my comment about the whole world building in this episode, which is why I'm so conflicted about it. I generally think that if this was not such a good episode for addition to lore, or like, hey, stabilizing and establishing what the state of the galaxy is at this time, I probably wouldn't have not liked it as much, because it pretty much is a Book of Boba Fett episode where Mando just showed up and hijacked Book of Boba Fett's episode. Mando got his show hijacked, but this time it feels, while it's still not a good thing to do, I at least liked what was going on here.
I liked this take on it a whole lot more than the Book of Boba Fett stuff, but Only in hindsight are we going to see how much it
Yeah.
the rest of the story.
And I think that's the problem I have is like if this was done in a movie, it'd probably be a bit more forgivable, especially if the movie wasn't called The Mandalorian. Instead, it was like Star Wars Birth of the New Republic. It could have been Star Wars Birth of the New Republic, and it could have been about stories that were happening during this timeline, which in that case, you could do whatever you want.
Star Wars Episode 6.5, hey, we're going to go to Coruscant.
Right.
That's what I was saying earlier. I feel like if they were still doing Rangers of the New Republic, this episode would be really good, like first episode. And I'm wondering if maybe they didn't like recycle some stuff from that show and put it in here. It kind of makes you wonder.
Yeah, now that you say that, I do wonder that myself.
This episode did feel like it could just be any episode. Like this middle part seems like it could have just been an episode they wrote for something else, but then they just tacked on 5 minutes of Mando at the beginning and 5 minutes at the end and called it a Mandalorian episode.
Yeah.
Just a Mandalorian
which
episode
would explain
sandwich.
why it was extra long.
Which is more than they did in Book of Boba Fett, at least.
Yeah.
True.
There wasn't any Mando in those, so.
Or any Boba, yeah.
Any Boba, yeah.
Except for like the one scene where they're looking at the hollow table, but
Yeah.
and he's just standing there
Menacingly.
Yeah. But yeah, that's why I'm so conflicted about this episode, because it does a lot of things I've been wanting. Like, it slows down, it takes the time and establishes the world, and it does so many things that Star Wars has been lacking. And it's like, yes, this is what we've been needing. The problem is you put it in an episode called Mando, where we're expecting to have the main protagonist, and he's not here.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so conflicted about this episode.
It felt like a textbook bait and switch where they drag you in for the first 10 minutes. It's real good, like top tier Mandalorian stuff, the first 10 minutes. And then, boom, you're very quickly thrown into this very slow, drawn out kind of episode that you were like not prepared for. Not in the mindset of coming off of episode 2, because that one was pretty fast paced. A lot of was happening in that episode. And
you were like, more mythosaur.
Yeah, the first 10 minutes. Yeah, the first 10 minutes of this episode was really good too, and really fast paced and quick. And then all of a sudden, boom! It's like I got stopped suddenly off a roller coaster.
Right.
It makes me wish that they had like some type of series or some type of like thing on Disney Plus where they could just have like these one-off episodes that help build background knowledge or whatever that you need for the show, but like not in the show. Like give
Star
me
Wars
a
one-offs.
extra episode like a few days before and be like, watch this before you go watch the next episode of Mandalorian if you want like this character to make sense. Because you kind of have to do that already with like having to watch the Book of Boba Fett shows. Why can't they just do that with these random episodes that they want to throw in?
Watch this if you want to understand anything.
Right, and this goes back to the title of the series versus what you're doing. And like I said, this would work if it wasn't called Mandalorian, it was just Star Wars X, like maybe it's called, post-Empire era or whatever you want to call it.
There just has to be a better way to do this rather than taking up an entire episode of a show that you're wanting to watch a certain character because it's literally named after that character and then not get that character in this episode is focused on something completely different. Like this has happened too many times now.
Yeah, it's happened in Book of Boba Fett. It's happened in Obi-Wan, and it's happening.
It happened on Obi-Wan?
Yeah, where
Just
it's
the entire
basically
show is
they focused a lot. They
Boba,
focused on Reva a lot. They focused on Leia.
But Obi-Wan is in every episode still.
He
Just
is,
about,
but he's
but
not like
he's-
the main driving character in the series. Where if you're watching a show called The Obi-Wan Kenobi Show, you're gonna expect the story to be driven by Obi-Wan Kenobi. Where it felt like it was much more driven by Reva and
all the external
Leia.
characters.
All the other characters drove the show.
pushing him around.
Yeah, and he was being dragged along for it.
I still feel like Obi-Wan's the central. But anyways, that's Obi-Wan.
He may be the central focus, but he's not driving where things are going. He didn't want to go rescue Leia. Somebody made him. He didn't want to fight Vader. Someone made him. He didn't. There was nothing in that show where he was just like, yeah, I want to do this. But yeah, going back to this one, it once again suffers from a very, established show with a certain title, but based around a certain character. and then you take that away from us. And I think this is the problem, is that with the show methodology is, if you look at the first 6 original films, they weren't centered around a particular person, and they were just called Star Wars, and the names were based off events, right? The Empire Strikes Back, the Return of the Jedi. And while you're getting things that are very critical to the story, mainly the Skywalkers, it is the Skywalker saga, you still have events happening around them that are important to the story, but neither one of them overdrives the other, right? So if, for example, in this show, if we needed the scientist guy for a particular reason, maybe 20 minutes to get caught up to speed what he's been up to, sure. And then maybe Mando showed up, right? I'd be fine with that. But almost 40 minutes of a unique story that I then go, okay, how is this relevant to the guy named Mando, who is still is not even in the system? He's in the Outer Rim.
Yeah.
There are plenty of shows and movies where this type of tactic is used. I mean, just Last of Us just did it. I don't think you guys have seen that, but
Nope.
Mad Men did it on a regular basis. Fantastic show. And so it is used effectively in this medium. But again, we've seen those or at least I've seen those full seasons, so it's easier to kind of see where it fits in than now.
I almost wonder if they broke it down, so instead of 40 minutes of just this guy's story, we got 4 10-minute blocks, and then you alternate, right? While this is happening, you switch back and forth between Mando and this guy, right?
Because that's what I think in an alternate cut or whatever, it would definitely benefit greater if they were to intersperse Mando stuff with the Pershing stuff.
Yeah, because that's what happens within the main story. Sorry, but if you look at, for example, I'm just gonna do with episode 5 because it's probably most arguably loved of the 6 films.
My favorite.
There's events happening on Hoth, for example, with Luke, the base, preparations, etc. We also go, during that whole time, we're getting flipped to Vader on his ship. He's talking to his admirals, and then there's another shot later talking to the Emperor, right? It's not all one of that, then all of the other. It's intermixed.
There's also a difference between a movie and a TV show. We have to wait another 3 or 4 weeks to find out how, depending on when they decide to bring his character in, but to figure out how this episode fits. Where with that movie, you're going to find out how those things fit together by the end of your watching of that day.
Yeah, but still, even this guy's story, there are plenty of points where you could have dropped it off.
Yeah.
And made his arc over 4 episodes. And then we had 4 episodes of both of them going side by side, because then I'd be interested. I'd be like, okay, what's going on here?
I do think that having them all at once brings more emotion in, because every time you're kind of at least for me, I just lose track emotionally where I'm at. And at least having it all the way through, especially because so much of it is a monotonous schedule, seeing it back to back to back brings me into his mindset a little more. And then if we cut up that routine, it does kind of take you out of it. I mean, I would imagine so.
Well, you could also
I can see where you're coming from there.
I get it, which is why I think it's a good episode, just not for this show.
Right, and that's why I think we're kind of conflicted on it, because it brings so many good things to the table, like the Imperial disposal yards and the record keeping amnesty program. There were so many.
The absolute ignorance of the New Republic getting rid of Imperial tech just because it's Imperial.
But that's something that you can totally see happen.
I don't think they were getting rid of everything.
Yeah, I know.
I thought my impressions was they were only getting rid of certain things because of what happened. So it seems like anything related to cloning technology was forbidden.
But they got rid of the entire Star Destroyer.
Well, they're decommissioning Star Destroyers. The list of all this tech and stuff that he was told to get rid of, it wasn't just all cloning stuff. It was just Imperial technology, and that he was like, what are you getting rid of this for? It's we're just, it's Imperial, so gotta toss it.
It's blacklisted.
Yeah,
they're both disorganized and simplistic in their worldview.
And they're repeating history, because there's a kind of the throwaway line in there. I forget exactly where it is in the episode.
Trap.
But no. Okay, so there's a line where they're and they're decommissioning the New Republic fleet or whatever. They're like demilitarizing again.
Yeah.
They're dismantling the Alliance fleet.
Yeah,
yes. And so here's the thing about that. Obviously, it's very stupid to be doing something like that, because then you just put yourself right back to where you started like 20 years ago.
Yeah, and there's still Imperial warlords out there.
I know, but unfortunately, I think whoever was writing this was stuck with the fact that Episode 7 existed and Episode 8 existed. True. And there is no Alliance fleet during that time.
Yeah.
I mean, you have fleets popping up everywhere in the sequels, though, so you could just like not do that.
No, the problem is that's not what Disney established.
Yeah,
or
so
you could have them go out in a bang and have a giant battle, and then they just poof into an asteroid.
Fun fact, I don't know if you guys really know this. I unfortunately know this lore from the sequels. The reason why the Resistance is a Resistance is because it's led by Leia. She's the only person in like the New Republic that wanted to remilitarize, and the New Republic was like, nah fam. So she is unsanctioned. She's like unsanctioned, but she's off on her own. She's defending the New Republic, but she's not officially part of it, and that's what the Resistance is. It's an unsanctioned militia.
Yeah.
I had to look it up when it came out, because I was like, why is it called the Resistance? Because I was confused when I watched Episode 7, so I looked it up. And she was an unsanctioned military force. At the same time, the government turns a blind eye to it, and they even sometimes indirectly support her. And you almost sit there going, so why are you not doing this, right? It's so weird. It's like they wanted to have a way to have the rebellion again. Because she has, for example, like she has like the T-72 X-Wing or whatever, but the Alliance has the T-80s or whatever, the newer version. So she gets like the older models that they don't use anymore, for example.
Yeah.
That's why like the sequel trilogy as a whole I don't like, because it just doesn't make sense. All right, we finally defeated the Empire. We're going to demilitarize. But why? And then it's like, well, we don't want to become the Empire. Okay, fine. Oh, later, there's this thing called the First Order lurking out somewhere. They're in the unknown regions. We don't know how big they are. Perhaps you should, remilitarize. No, we're not going to do that. So, just straight ignorance, right? And so, unfortunately...
I do understand the fear behind it not wanting to become the Empire, because it would be very easy to, in a lot of ways.
But the previous Republic was around for, like, what, how many tens of thousands of years?
Yeah.
So, to me, it's just... This little bit of lore was needed to support the unfortunately trash sequel trilogy that just needs to be wiped from canon, to be honest.
Absolutely.
I enjoy.
Well, if you turn your brain off, yeah.
I have a lot of like specific notes that we're kind of like just brushing past a lot of this stuff.
And that's something interesting, super quick, is that the way we're talking about this says something about an episode too, because we're not like... We're not going through sequences like we typically do in the last couple.
Yeah.
We're kind of talking about bigger picture themes, stuff like that. And that's kind of interesting.
Well, I think
it's more of that conversation than it does, because it's not a real plotty episode, which is, in my opinion, great. But the themes it touches on are much more critical to it.
Well, so that's like the thing. There's like, it's like I said, mostly well-written episode, and it's very linear, straightforward. I like that it's slowed down, all that. There's really not too much to nitpick over because of it, because they take their time.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why we're talking about it from a holistic perspective, because the issue itself is that it doesn't fit where it is.
Yeah.
I think if this was like in a show that was meant to be about this main character, the main character of this episode, I forget his name. What's his name?
Dr. Pershing.
Dr. Pershing. If this was supposed to be an episode in this show about Dr. Pershing, I would probably have way more qualms with it, or like I'd have more detailed things. But just the fact that it feels like it doesn't quite fit just like irked me and like made me not be able to see all those little things in between.
I don't think it'd be a show about him. I think it'd just be to me, it looked like it was an episode that's supposed to be around the program that he's in.
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah,
right?
If it was a show like that was about what was happening in the episode, not about Mando.
Every episode, we get a new, person that's new to the program, right? Mm-hmm. And we see what happens to him.
I do think this could be another argument for the power of binge watching shows too, because I have a totally different take on the first episode after the second one came out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I think I might have a different take on this one too. Well, I mean, I like this one a lot, but
Yeah, I mean, where it is, obviously you have to look at it, what show it's in, where in the show it's been placed. So obviously it feels like some kind of major plot setup of something.
Yeah.
Like, this is
Which
relevant
is
for
just
some
not
reason.
very clear. Yeah, for some reason it's relevant, but right now we just can't see it. So hopefully we get some kind of payoff or find out why this was, important.
Right.
yeah,
And
they go back to the cloning a lot. That's
Yeah.
obviously some critical, whether it's this season or a future one. Maybe they're setting up even like multiple arc season at this point. Who
It's
knows?
possible. This season is definitely more serialized.
And
yeah.
because they hinted at this even in season 1, like this sort of so maybe they're planning out something even larger scale than just this season's story.
Well, yeah, I mean, they keep coming back to it because like they found like those vats with what looked like to be maybe potentially early cloning prototypes for like Palpatine or something, which might be a
Right.
reference back to the old EU. Even he's like, yeah, my research was in cloning and all this stuff. And, I can't tell if it's them trying to be like, well, the big part of the Clone Wars and the extinction of the Jedi was Order 66 through the clones, right? So maybe they're just like, after that devastation, like, oh yeah, they were our loyal, soldiers and companions until one secret order was given, and then they turned on us in a blink of an eye, right? With that, and no one could foresee it. Not even the soldiers themselves foresaw their betrayal, right? And so maybe they were just so distraught with that they were just like, nope, we're just gonna ban cloning technology. Period. We don't want this happening again.
Right.
The whole way they were treated by the New Republic gave me very like, there is no war in Ba Sing Se vibes,
Yeah. No, I liked how the New Republic in this to me feels a little bit like a cult.
Yeah.
Like it literally feels like brainwashing in many ways.
Are you fast forwarding to the end of the episode?
No.
No, even in the beginning, even
Yeah.
like literally even when they get there to the amnesty program and they introduce that for the first time, like one of the first scenes there, post opera, just the way they're talking to each other, the way that they're like, talking about either what they miss or whatever, it just all feels like they're brainwashed. And later on we find out maybe they have been, but
I mean, they're even calling each other by their numbers, their new numbers instead of names and stuff,
And they did say at the end that it seems like half of the people that come in get this treatment because they said half of them are good and half of them are bad, or half of them don't assimilate.
Was it half of them relapsed? Is what they said. Which made me go, wait, has this guy been brainwashed before? And this is like his X amount of time?
I was wondering, like, has he been through this already, or how many times has he already done this?
That's interesting. Yeah.
But I don't think they would have him waste the time of the Senate to go in front of them and say that speech several times.
Maybe not, but
that's a good point.
I mean, who knows?
But it's pretty unethical of the New Republic what they're doing.
Yeah, no matter what.
That's what I'm saying. That's that black dot within mostly white.
And that's what I love it. And I wouldn't even say mostly white. I would say probably, I think they're probably worse than we're led to believe. I think they probably suck.
Well, they suck because whoever wrote the sequels was.
No, I mean, I just think the New Republic would suck irrelevantly. I mean, those and well, that's getting into other things. But
I just like the old
I don't think you can be in power and not suck. Is what I'm saying. I think it's impossible.
I disagree with that, but
that's more philosophical than Star Wars.
Now, I could see the argument that when you get so big, it's hard to keep things pure and straight, and ethical. Yeah, I can totally believe that, right? As you become a superpower, things like that. It's when you get tens of thousands of, and maybe in this universe, probably millions of diplomats and all bunch of stuff to make a government run of this size. Yeah, things are gonna get dirty somewhere.
Yeah, the moral argument of like these people could potentially be dangerous, sure, in the amnesty program. So we're just hurting a few of them just to make sure that the good of the many outweigh the few. But you're also like, just brainwashing these individuals. So at an individual level, it's really awful.
Well, I mean, were they actually brainwashing, or was it truly something that's just like there to help them, and then someone cranked it up to turn it into brainwashing, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing we really don't know, is like what would have been the effect if what that guy was claiming to be is true, because he's like, I had it done to me and I remember, and it was quite soothing. Maybe it is.
The way that they're talking at the beginning of that episode in the program, man, they just seem like mindless drones to me.
Yeah, and even at the end when he's going through it, they say like at low ampage or whatever, low voltage, it's fine, but she cranks it all the way to max, so he's probably brain dead.
Oh, maybe not brain dead, but definitely brainwashed. Like, clearly, right? Like,
yeah.
But I don't think necessarily people around here were that way, because she specifically asked, like, hey, can I stay in the room? And they're like, sure, yeah. They're like, I'm her friend, he relapsed. And they're like, oh, we understand. And they could all have been generally good people, and she just manipulated the situation to do something to him, right? Because we don't know what happens next, which is the unfortunate part, but she could probably turn it down right as they come back in, right? And they could take him out and like, oh, how you doing? He's like, where am I? And they'd be like, are you okay? He's like, what are you talking about? And it'd be like, something happened. And she'd be like, I don't know.
We talked earlier about like the idea of like predictability too with that. And like I predicted her transition the whole time.
Oh yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I think it was like bad, right? Like just because I can predict it doesn't mean like a surprise isn't needed to be good. And I think that's a good example of that. It's like,
yeah.
I knew she was the whole time, but I was only trying to understand her motivations. And of course
that's
I didn't
that's
quite
the thing.
get that yet. But
yeah, that's the part that I'm confused. I'm like, why is she doing this? Like, I'm so confused.
Yeah, and that's what they're leading to.
Why would you encourage someone to break the law so they can get caught so you could brainwash them? Like, I'm totally confused by this, right? And how did a ex-Imperial officer get in charge, like, or become an officer within the program? That just seems so odd to me.
Yeah, it does. It seems odd to me too, and we didn't get an answer this episode of any real.
And this is like my problem with the show so far, is that I hate knowing that I have to wait next week for the previous episode to make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should release them all at once.
Well, episode 2 wasn't like that. Like, I didn't need to see episode 3 to really, with the exception of like, did he fall or did he get pulled down? We pretty much understood what happened in episode 2.
Yeah, but I feel like I needed episode 2 to really get the most out of episode 1.
Yes, and I'm wondering, is episode 4 going to be the same thing? We need episode 4 to make episode 3 make sense, but episode 4 is fine in itself.
Yeah.
We'll get episode 5, we'll be confused once again, and then we're going to make episode 6,
You said this last time, was that a nice mix in between, I think, would be to just release arcs at once. If they're going to do, like, kind of these little arcs, I do think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did like the references to Camino. That was a nice little prequel nod. And Coruscant looks beautiful.
Oh my god.
So just the way I left her in the prequels, just
So
amazing.
While we're talking about it, I did have a question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So obviously they made it, maybe or maybe not, but it looks like that the government is back on Coruscant, right? Did you guys get that impression?
It feels like it. At least something's going on there, New Republic.
Because in episode 7 we thought Coruscant was destroyed. Then we were told, no, that's not Coruscant. It's the
Hosnian system.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where the capital is. And I'm like,
I think they moved it there, or maybe that's where the capital is, and they're just Coruscant's still a major planet. I don't know.
I could actually see that, right? Because maybe because I guess you could maybe make the argument that they're still cleaning up Coruscant. Maybe you have to de-imperialize it. And so in the meantime, maybe for the sake of trying to be like, we're the New Republic, we're going to be at this new place and we're going to build it from the ground up. So
they have to tear down that Imperial Senate and just rebuild it because they can't use anything that was once Imperial.
Or they just remove the flags. Well, to be fair, the Emperor dissolved the Senate by episode 4, so it wasn't being used for that whole point anyway.
Yeah. Oh, getting to see that building though. Well, that wasn't the Senate building, but the theater building from episode 3 is awesome.
Right. And so, yeah, like there was many things about Coruscant. I was like, yeah, this is actually really cool to see. I did have a question for you, in particular. The whole like this is the highest point on Coruscant, and it shows this rock, which is actually the top of a mountain sticking out.
Mm-hmm.
What are your guys' thoughts on that? Because I was originally told that Coruscant wasn't even a planet; it was just a collection of machines.
No, so in Legends, Coruscant used to be a, normal world, and that's where the humans and the Tong originated.
Okay.
They used to be, natural world, and over centuries, the Tong and the humans fought and ended up their war like destroyed the planet basically, like volcanic eruptions and junk. So the humans stayed, the Tong left, and then the Tong ended up creating the Mandalorians. The humans stayed and built up Coruscant as this giant city planet.
They rebuilt the whole
over
place.
the centuries. Yeah. So it is still technically a real planet. It's just covered in metal now.
Okay. That did make me think, like, I wonder how tall that mountain is. Because if that's the top of a mountain, per se, the tallest point on the planet, I'm curious how tall that is. Because, here on Earth...
It's sticking up out of pavilion in the upper levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So it's got a pretty tall mountain. And I immediately think, that's probably like Mount Everest. And then I was like, wait a minute. No one can breathe at the top of Mount Everest. So
these are different oxygen.
Right.
Or,
so
they might not even. Do they even breathe oxygen? I don't know.
Yeah, that's me being a bit nitpicky, but I was like, I wonder how. That's why I said I wonder how tall it is, because there's other mountains you don't need special gear to get on top of. So
this episode's 5 out of 10. They couldn't breathe oxygen up there.
But yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting, because that made me wonder, like, I wonder how high they're up, and I wonder how thin the air is up there. But at the same time, it's a very engineered planet. There's probably no natural greenery, so it probably has to be manufactured anyway, right?
And then they get after they talk about that, there's a mention of like 1 trillion people, so they finally get some sort of like a population there, which is like unimaginable.
Well, yeah, and in Legends, it already said there was like a few, maybe 1 or 2 trillion on Coruscant.
Yeah, but to have it confirmed is like just trying to imagine 1 trillion people on a planet is insane.
Yeah,
that's such a scale.
I like how he had the data pad at night. It was sitting on the bed, and it was speaking the definition of the kind of planet that was. And I was like, brilliant way to tell your audience what it is, right?
It's kind of like that one scene in, I think it was season 2, or maybe it was Book of Boba Fett. I don't even remember now. But it was when Mandalorian went into the school for the first time and had Grogu sitting there, and the droid was talking about the Hydian way.
Mm-hmm.
Same kind of idea.
Yeah.
Where they just kind of plug in those little lore bits like that.
Yeah, and if you already knew what the definition of I think it's called a Ecolopus or something. I can't pronounce it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's like
whatever that word is. They had the definition playing, and I thought, yeah, I already know what Coruscant is, and it's that kind of city. But I'm glad that they put that in there for maybe somebody who doesn't play things like Stellaris and other, massive city, organizational things like that. So, so like that, this whole episode, I was like, wow, there are so many clever ways of them like establishing lore and adding things. But why is it called Mandalorian?
How much do you think Disney is going to sell of that glowy ice cream, in their parks now?
Oh, that was
Dude,
cool.
I wanted it.
Yeah, me too.
So it's probably just...
What were they called again? Does anybody know?
I have no idea.
She said them by name. I just can't remember.
Well, I think she was going to buy him a different kind of treat.
Yeah, I think I don't know.
So I don't think we know what they were eating, but I think if Disney were to sell it, I think it's just honestly just a frozen snack with a light bulb in it.
Like a little LED on a stick, and it's ice cream.
Then they get a lawsuit against them when some kid ingests a LED bulb.
Yeah. I don't think they can put that in food, Lily.
No.
It would have to be like a bowl of it rather than a cone of it.
Yeah.
And the bowl lights up.
But still, I thought, fancy way of Star Wars-ifying a classic treat. Yeah. So yeah, there's just there's so many elements all over the place that we could talk about, but we'd be here for hours.
Well, yeah, one more thing I had, and then we can move on to later on. When they first met each other at that table, like kind of like when he was talking about, it all felt like drone-ish and stuff. When Pershing recognizes the Imperial officer from Gideon's ship, he's like, "What's somebody that worked for Gideon doing here?" And they're like, "You worked for Gideon?"
Yeah.
And was like, all like, "What the heck?" But then they didn't question Pershing either, even though he recognized her. He was obviously on the same ship.
Yeah, it was an odd encounter, right? I was gonna get the sense of like, oh, you're one of those really dark people. We don't like you here, you know.
It kind of makes it seem like maybe she's done something. Maybe they know something she's done before that already was making them suspicious of her. If they weren't as suspicious of him.
Yeah. I thought it was more like they kind of already knew her, like they were kind of a friend group. And so it was like, why didn't we already know this about you, more than, oh, you work for him? I think it's rather, why didn't we know this about you already?
And it does say something about her that she did not tell them.
Right. Yeah, it may have been something like, I don't know about you, but if you're working for the Empire and you did some of the most evil of things and you're trying to get amnesty in the New Republic, would you be going around telling people those things? Probably not.
And maybe that's why she did what she did at the end, because she wants to get rid of this guy that knows her past, because she's trying to, you know, possibly infiltrate or do something shady. She's trying to get rid of people that know the real her.
Yeah, see, and
that might get onto
you might be right, and this goes back to that whole, like, it was a neat episode, but at the end of the day, I was scratching my head.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a deeper story there of why she did. I think that's a whole other thing, and I don't even really have any guesses.
Yeah,
as
like
I think she's so used this plan the way she did.
So, is there anything else that you want to talk about, like in that whole Coruscant arc area? I did like the train. I thought that was neat.
Not from a Jedi.
I did find it. I was originally watching that scene with them in the train. I was like, so all you had to do was just get on board. No one's gonna check to see. I was thinking it was more like a subway, which I guess if you jump over the gates on a subway, yeah, you can do the same thing. So I was thinking the same thing, and then the droids come through like, ticket please. I'm like, oh, okay.
Well,
I've traveled a lot on trains overseas, and I get a lot of anxiety as the ticket masters are coming up. And I felt the same anxiety when I know they didn't have their tickets, and I'm like, oh no, you're gonna get fined. And then they ran for it. I'm like, oh, that's an even bigger fine. So I got really stressed over something stupid.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's how the trains in Europe work, where they check your ticket after the train's already gone.
Yeah, you just get on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like to me the odd thing was, even by jumping off and evading the droids, right? I was sitting here going, yeah, but you're still busted, right? They know somebody was on there that should have been on there. They'll be looking for you.
Most of the trains in other places, like in bigger cities or whatever in Europe, are pretty chill. Like, it's not like the end of the world of law breaking. Yeah.
Well, they also weren't supposed to be on the train. They said the people that are in their program are designated area, so they were afraid that they were going to get kicked out and sent back to like whatever prison they were in before.
Right, and so it would have been a double whammy, right? So I understand why they fled, but did the security droid just get to the end of the train like, they're missing, oh well, I'll forget about it and go back to asking for tickets? Like, I don't think that's what happened.
That's probably their protocol.
I do have a little bit of a gripe about this, and it's not just this show that does this, it's basically anything that has a train in it. It's so outdated for conductors or people to go through and ask for tickets.
It is.
They did that when I was in Europe 10
really?
years ago. Yeah. Well, it was 10 years ago now, but
they did it in Ireland and Amsterdam when I was just there. It's still pretty common.
They still do that.
I don't know. I mean, my only
the U.S. system doesn't do that.
Yeah, my only experience with trains is Japan, and they don't do that.
I think
you have to have your ticket. You go in through the stall to even get down to the platform. So if you're on the train, you got a ticket.
Right.
Yeah, Japan has the most modernized train system in the world, but plenty of Europe still go through with some sort of a train ticket taker. Yeah, very, very common.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily wrong that they do it that way in Star Wars. It is an interesting choice, but at the same time in Star Wars, I'm like, I could see that working, right? I mean, it's so easy to get on and off a vehicle like that, when you get things like jetpacks and such, right? So to me, it would make sense that you would just walk through and be like, show me your ticket. I want to make sure you actually paid to get on here.
There are countries, this is really tangent, but there are countries like Austria where it's all the honor system and they occasionally get on and check, but for the most part, it doesn't happen. And so that would be interesting in Star Wars too. But
yeah,
just chance it. And most people just obey the law naturally without.
Yeah, and I did find myself looking, and I was like, wait a minute, this female chick officer, right, is like, oh, but you got to run now. I'm like, well, that looks pretty sus. You said you've done this before, right? Shouldn't you known this was going to be a thing? Shouldn't you've gotten on the back car so you would have had?
That makes me think that it is a sporadic check then, because she didn't know if they were going to come. So maybe it does have the Austria system. Yeah,
which I think may have been helpful if she had said something to him like,
they may check our tickets, they might not. It's the honor system here.
Or as they came in, she'd be like, crap, it's a random check. We got to get out here, like.
That would just be more of stuff we didn't need in this.
And he's like, hey, have you ever read the rails in Vienna? And he's sometimes they check the tickets and sometimes they don't. And we just have this like 10-minute discussion of like how the fine system works for trains.
This is what's gonna happen if they catch us.
Yeah. Do you happen to have your debit card on you, because they will need to charge it now, or cash, or peso,
or we're gonna throw you off,
or yen? How do you?
Where are your credits? Imperial credits don't work anymore. Darn it!
Just remember, Republic's credits don't work on here. We take only money.
Only money.
But to go. And I know you're like, that's more of what we don't need in the show, and I agree, but at the same time, I'm still for critiquing what is in the show to try to make whatever that is written better.
You swindled me.
You could throw in one quick line where she's just like, we're safe here if they come and look for tickets, let's head out back, but most of the time they don't check it, so we should be good.
Right, something like that. Yeah, to make it appear like this is more of a random event and not a predictable event. Because I was sitting here going, "You've done this before." You even said to him, "How do you think I got you those biscuits?" And I'm like, "Okay, that would make sense."
Oh, yeah. Even just short, they occasionally check these tickets, but we should be fine. I haven't ever encountered it while I'm here.
Yeah, right. That would have been a great line to make it really sound like they really don't bother with that. And then the one time it happens, that she could have been like, oh. Crap.
So guys, I only have one more small note about the end of the episode. So
yeah, and I think I have a feeling I know what you're gonna ask.
Well, maybe, I don't know.
But before you do, just thoughts about like the whole like decommission yards that they had with like
that. I mean, yeah, that was neat.
Cool.
I thought it was fun watching them go through the decommissioned Star Destroyer. That was cool looking.
Yeah.
It's neat.
And it was really neat to see the Empire just didn't disappear overnight, right? So the fact that they had a place where they were doing decommissioning. And it makes sense because you would probably strip all the useful parts out of it and then scrap the whole in itself, because I know, knowing the New Republic, they would probably be looking at it to go, yeah, that's a symbol of tyranny, so we want to get rid of it. Mm-hmm. However, that's
the same thing Empire did to the Republic ships.
Yeah, cut up all those Venators, right? Yeah. After they got their replacements, obviously they didn't. As soon as Order 66 was done being executed, Palpatine was like, "All right, get rid of them,"
No.
But yeah, it makes sense that it just adds to the world building, right? They're decommissioning these ships, and it takes time to do so. But yeah, I hated hearing that one guy go, "Oh yeah, we have to decommission the Alliance fleet." I'm like, "Oh, you fools." I know. I immediately went, I know why this line is here, because of these thing called the sequels that happen after this show. And it's like the one stain in this episode. And unfortunately, like I said, I don't blame the writer for putting this in. I actually commend him for doing it, because it actually makes sense for why the galaxy is the way it is in the sequels, even if that reasoning is flawed.
I feel it's subtle, but I do think that this season is giving a lot more nods to the sequels than I would have liked.
Yeah, which means that the sequels are here to stay.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But at the same time, I'm all for trying to make them less bad. It's still not going to change the fact that they are bad.
Yeah.
But at least, if you were to watch everything in chronological order.
As far as these little hints, though, you don't mind them, like, kind of poking at the sequels a little bit and tweaking some things to make more sense, right? I mean, that's...
No, I'm not. And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm happy that it's there, but at the same time, I hate it because it's like it just shows the illogicalness of the sequels, right? All these things that they're doing, and then it's like, oh yeah, we have to decommission the Alliance fleet along with the Imperial fleet. I'm like, why would you do that? Just like, I'm not going to get into it a whole, but you just look at the real world, right? Like, how many nukes do we have pointed at each other?
Yeah.
It's that whole, like, mutual assured destruction. You can't kill me because I will kill you at the same time. So, yeah, it would be like us and Russia getting rid of all our nukes. Yeah, that seems great overall, except for the fact that there's China, North Korea, France that have nukes. Even if they're very little amounts, they're going like, well, guess what? I can do whatever I want now. That's just the way the power works. So it's like, I get it. I'm glad it's there, but at the same time, I go, you fools, you've learned nothing.
Yeah.
So.
And generally, I think humanity doesn't learn anything either, so I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah. I mean,
another universe would probably be the same way.
Yeah, so it's like, we're par for like going through the whole thing again, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Jedi are very stupid, so and they're supposed to be the brightest, and they're
The thing was is that if you look at, I don't know what it was like from Old Republic to the prequels, but by the time the prequels rolled around, they really didn't have a standing army. But there was no need to it by that point. But it wasn't always like that. I could see if the New Republic was around for a few centuries and they're just like, these ships are getting old, we don't ever fight anyone, just decommission them and don't bother replacing it. That would make a lot more sense, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as you defeat your opponent, and heck, there's even warlords and stuff out there, and you're just like, decommission our fleet. I'm like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
What was your final thing?
All right, so after all the Pershing nonsense,
We go back to the actual show.
We finally get back to the titular character and his work wife.
Okay.
So they come back to their little covert, and he, gives the living waters to the armor. He gets redeemed, and then she drops one on Bo, and it's like, you're redeemed too. She's like, what? I'm wondering what you think Bo's really doing. Like, is she really joining the watch? What is her mindset? Is she just playing 4D chess? Because I was watching the scene again before recording, and I was like, she when all those Mandalorians are coming up and like congratulating her and like welcoming her in and stuff, she's staring at that mythosaur skull on the wall the whole time.
Yeah. This is why I thought at the beginning it was more of like a planned thing. Did you see that mythosaur?
Yeah.
Because I think she's thinking, well, my quickest way here to power is to fulfill that prophecy of sorts.
Interesting.
And that's what's neat. That's what makes this show, or this season at least,
intriguing.
So good and intriguing is the Mandalorian characters. Like, we're theorizing and trying to think up of what's going on inside their heads more than what we were about, Pershing and the whole main part of this episode.
Yeah. As much as I like that story arc, it's not what I was here for, right?
Yeah. It's like I'd rather be watching the Mandalorians duke it out and be bad A's and all sorts of stuff.
It's like, man,
and their plot and their character stuff.
It is crazy in how religious they are when she's been like an apostate according to them for like so long. And all it takes is this dumb little ritual, and then they're just like, oh, hey, we're gonna pat you on the back. I'm like, man, you guys are really like hyper religious to
Yeah.
like a really crazy degree.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's really kind of interesting because it's something that I didn't really think about. But Paz Vizsla, the big guy with
the big Gatling gun thing,
that comes out and talks to Mando there at the end. He's related to, I guess I think his name's Pre Vizsla from the Clone Wars, right, who used to own the Darksaber, who used to be like leader of Death Watch and all this stuff. So he's kind of a player too. If you think about it, he could be a viable player for the Mandalorian leader.
I mean, he
if he
fought
were to,
for the saber in
yeah.
Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, so he could. I think they're kind of doing his character a disservice. Honestly, he feels like this background, just reoccurring character that's not very important, but he's just there when it suits him. But it feels like if you really know who he is and his background, he could be a super important character.
Right. Yeah, it feels like they focus so much more on the armor, who isn't, I don't know, it's like cool, but like not particularly interesting.
Yeah.
He seems to have a lot more potential there.
Yeah. So my thoughts about the scene were, again, well, at least by this point, Mando's like, with these people, you'll probably do a lot better if you keep your helmet on. She's like, noted, granted.
Playing the game.
Right, and if I were her, I would absolutely do the same thing, right? Don't make these people that outnumber you angry.
Don't make waves.
And you kind of want to have a place to stay since you don't have a home and people are chasing you. You kind of want a place to lay low until you figure out a plan, at least.
Right, you need a new place to lay seductively.
Yeah. And one reason why I thought maybe, she's trying to hatch a scheme or whatever, is that when he says that, she kind of is like, she sighs and she's like, yeah, whatever. So that she's not really all in on it. And she even states that she's like, I don't follow the way. And she's like, but have you removed your helmet? No.
So,
dang it.
So, like, see, that's the thing. I looked at it a bit differently, but, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're all wrong. We won't know until next week. I viewed it as she was just trying to get through the situation, right? Like, so, I mean, you showed up. They weren't really too keen on letting her even in the door, right? They're like, who are you, Night Owl? Which I'm assuming is based off her.
Well, that's her group. That's her sect. She went from being leader of Death Watch, or not leader of Death Watch, but in Death Watch, to leader of the Night Owls. And I think that's.
I'm assuming it has to do with the paint on there, right? Because
it's on her helmet.
Got something on his shoulder that identifies him.
Yeah, it's her helmet.
And she's like, my name is Bo-Katan, and I'm like, oof, that's probably not gonna sit well with him. And sure enough, it definitely did not sit well with them.
But then they were good about it in like 2 seconds.
Well, not really, because he was like, I bathed in the waters.
If a giant Mandalorian like pats me on the back like a loving little dog, I'd say I'm good.
Well, I don't think Paz patted her. I think he's kind of, like I said, he's just there. But I think he's waiting in the wings, and he's not a huge fan. Yeah, he's not a huge fan of Mando. He's not a huge fan of Bo. And even when she gets brought in, he's just, there. He's not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
But he's not congratulating her or anything, but he's just there.
Mando's like, I bathed in the waters. You're like, yeah, right. The place is cursed and poison. He's like, and then, Bogga's like, hey, I watched him do it. And he's like, I even have proof. I have the water. And they're like, we'll see, which, that makes sense, right?
Thank God they've got a little test there. Otherwise, woof, that would have been a stretch.
But it makes sense that something, if so in the real world, we can actually kind of track where certain things are coming from.
Yeah.
The fact that he's like, yeah, I have this water, gives it to the armorer, and she's like, okay, I have this special thing I can do a test. If it's real, it flashes a special color,
It looks. It missed it up. We're good.
Mm-hmm.
He puts regular water outside. It messed up again. She's like, "Oh shoot." No, I don't know. Did you check the pH levels of this? Did we put that fish medicine in?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I was watching a review about the second episode a while back, and they were talking about the living waters and how they were theorizing that the water or liquid that she pours in to make the Mandalorian armor is the living waters, and they were right. And I'm wondering if the living waters has some kind of special attribute or something that is essential to maybe making the Mandalorian armor itself, because she pours it into the quenching water or whatever, the quenching oil, every time she makes a new thing. So she's got a stash of it on her. How does she get it? But that's interesting because it makes the living waters actually somehow viable and needed for Mandalorian armor.
There's something special in the water that's needed for the forging of the Beskar, because
yeah. She should have been like, oh, by the way, here's a bucket. You should probably bring me back some more.
Could you run back and grab me some, please?
Don't worry, you can fit it in your N1 in that little compartment above the engine where Grogu sits.
Yeah, just stuff it in there.
So it makes me wonder if the Empire, even when they had access to the Beskar, couldn't fully utilize Beskar to its best. Right, unless they had the water, which again kind of proves the idea of like you wouldn't bomb Mandalore if you wanted to use the Beskar, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think there was something in season 1, actually, that mentioned something about how the Beskar isn't as pure or whatever since the Purge. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's been a while
if that's the case, then this is probably why, because they didn't have access to living waters.
Right. Again, that's kind of neat. Seems to be some implications to the lore building for even if it's maybe not something you may or may not like.
It's whatever.
What I found interesting is that she definitely emphasized like, yeah, he fell and I had to go pull him out. Like, why'd you have to do him dirty like that? You did have to mention that he fell. It almost feels like she wanted to make sure that they knew, hey, I went in the water too.
Yeah, I pulled him out of there.
It'd be different if he was like, yeah, I went into living water. I even stumbled and Bo-Katan saved me and I'm in debt with her. Like, if he had said something like that and she acknowledged, like, yes, he did fall and I had to go in and pull him out and save him, like that'd be a little bit different, right?
He did kind of suck. He was a little bit of a rookie here. Yeah, he's right. He was. he was right. He did suck. I had to.
But, this inadvertently proved, because that when she tests the water, like, he's not lying. He's correct. He's indeed Mandalorian again. And of course, everyone's kind of shocked. And then she's like, "By creed, you're also now one of us." And
I liked when she said that, and it goes to the shot of Din, and he's just like, he whips his head over to her. He's like, "What?"
I saw that too.
Like, he's like, son of a. I had to do all this. I've had to do all this work, and you're telling me I could just like dip and then I'm good. I've been following this. I've been in this fight since I was 5 years old. Suddenly it's real for you.
And I think even Bo was like, I don't walk the way. I think she was actually trying to get out of it by saying that.
Yeah.
And then they're like, by creed, you're not one of us. And as long as you don't take your helmet off, you're welcome to stay. And I think that's why she was kind of like looking around a little bit when they got pats on the back. She's like, oh crap, that happened.
It's also kind of interesting. Is like, is that really the only requirement? Like, if you don't take your helmet off, you're good, but you can do whatever else.
I think that's
according
their
to
main
them,
requirement.
she was a Mandalorian at one point. Is what I guess her ideology is. Even if it's been a really long time, she's technically corrected herself according to their philosophy, and all is good. Which I guess in a way is kind of like a Christian perspective, right? As long as you come.
Kind of every religion, you go back, you follow the rules, you do your repentance, and you're good.
So it's kind of interesting, and I don't think she had went with Mando with the intention of joining that clan. I haven't watched any videos, but one of them came up as a suggestion that she was a fraud. I'm like, I think you're overlooking that if you're thinking that. Like, if she was playing the whole thing the whole time, I don't think she had that intention going in.
I don't think she has a whole game yet. I mean, I think that's what these are going to be developing. Like, she's figuring out a plan right now. I don't think she's going in with anything.
Yeah. Like, I think once she saw that mythosaur, she's like, oh shoot, and now she's starting to try and hatch a plan or something.
Yeah,
well, that's what I was saying.
She's holding her cards with that mythosaur secret, but maybe she's not so vindictive with it.
I don't think she has a plan.
She's definitely the most intriguing character right now.
Yes.
In my opinion.
Yes, I would say so too. She's more interesting than, and I think Din is great, but she's more interesting than him in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm very interested to see what happens next, but my final thoughts is that I don't think she had any intention of joining their little cult. I think she even tried to get out of it. So if anyone's like, oh no, she totally meant to do that and is playing them, I was like, I don't know what you're looking at, because that's... yes, she made the
She
one
might do that. She might do that in the future, but
maybe in the future. But
yeah.
at this point, I don't think so, because she didn't even know they were going there until they were landing, right?
Yeah.
So kind of hard to make a plan.
At this point, though, they can be very useful to her if she manipulates correctly. Like, as a loner, like she could potentially gain a lot of power using this crew.
Yeah, going in, does she have that plan? No, but could she later go, these people are now my buddies because I
buddies, that's the word I like.
I put that in air quotes.
Yeah.
I could use this, right? I mean, there's nothing to say from this point on she could manipulate them, but going in there, do I think she had that intention? No. I think she's still kind of in shock from the Mythosaur being there, and now she's part of this cult that she's been making fun of this whole time. So I think she's now in this double, like, okay, so the creature that I thought was extinct actually exists, and this cult that I've been making fun of Jin for, I'm now part of. What has happened in the last 5 hours, you know?
Yeah.
Is everything true? Is everything permitted?
So that's what I think her headspace is.
Well, we're pretty much wrapping up. So I'm very surprised. My reaction to our discussion here, I'm super surprised at how on target we all are, or how agreeable we are on our perception of this episode. We have different views on certain things, but like overall we all agree, and that's kind of weird. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
I was expecting Tykoth to absolutely love this episode and everything about it.
Oh, I do love it. I just understand if you don't. But I'm on board for everything it does personally, but I just completely understand if you aren't like that. And
I'm super surprised at Captain for liking it as much as he did. So,
like I said, on one hand I like it, and on one hand I don't. But I think you'll see that in the score that I give it at the end.
Yeah. So for me, it's like I'm a little mix of both of you guys. I don't know really which way I lean more towards, because I understand and I like a lot of what the episode does from Tykoth's perspective, and I totally agree and wish it wasn't, in this show from Captain's perspective. But man, it's such a weird episode. It really highlights the pacing issues of the season as a whole, in my opinion.
If you were to watch the first 3 back to back, I think you'd be suffering whiplash and probably need to go to a chiropractor.
Yeah. So what are you guys' final thoughts? I will go with Klein, because she hasn't talked in a while.
I want to see the rest of the show in order to see how this episode fits.
Yeah.
Because right now it just feels like a puzzle piece that doesn't go to this puzzle.
You don't have any of the pieces around it.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. All right, Captain.
Well, holistically, without giving a number, probably, like I said, I don't like it in the fact that I basically got dipped for a Mandalorian episode. But at the same time, what they did give me, it did so much world building that I think post Return of the Jedi desperately needs. So I like it, but I don't like it. I don't want to see more of these, by the way. I like your world building, but I want it in around the main protagonist, not a whole different episode that doesn't belong here. Don't do that.
Yeah. All right, Tykoth.
Yeah, I'm always for uniqueness above all else, so I would rather something take a wild, weird swing and miss it than play it safe and just hit it over the fence. So, and this one took a wild swing and also hit it over the fence for me. So I'm all about like artistic integrity. So I mean, I'm gonna praise it for that. I'd rather it be dangerous.
Nice. Last thing, we're gonna do our number 0 to 10. I'll go first because I mentioned it earlier at the beginning that I said it was a 5 in my initial viewing. I think I'll bump it up to about a 6.5. I'm not sure how to really justify it. It's just the extra points for how just amazingly good the first 10 minutes were. And the rest of it just felt like just like we discussed, like it didn't really belong in the show, and it was meant for something else, sort of idea. But maybe it'll go up after the next episode. Who knows? Just
well, that's
like,
to say, we can do a end of season like readjustment based off of the knowledge. But as of right now, you're going to give it a 6.5. You said
for sure, yeah. All right, Captain.
I'm between a 4.5 and a 6.5. I keep going back and forth on this.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That's lower than I was expecting. Yeah.
The reason is that at the end of the day, as much as I enjoyed the world building, it doesn't belong here. And so I'm now looking at the ratio of what belongs here versus what doesn't belong here. So we had almost an hour-long episode, and almost 2/3 of it was not related to Mando whatsoever as of right now.
Yeah.
So at best, even if I love every part of the Mando, he's not even half of his own episode. So at best, I can give would be proportional based off of that. That's why we're between somewhere at 4.5 to 6.5, because the 4.5 comes from the part that Mando is in his own episode, which is stellar. I didn't have any problems with really didn't have any major problems with the part that Mando is in. So the issue now comes with, well, what about the filler?
Yeah.
And this is where I'm going back and forth of giving it a 0, because I am tired of seeing things that don't belong in their shows. Like, we had 2 whole episodes of Mando and Book of Boba Fett, and that show was supposed to be 6 episodes. So in the end, you got 4. It's like, I feel like I got robbed, even if it was not the best show in the world.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm kind of leaning towards that 4.5, because I kind of want to be like, put my foot down. I'm like, yeah, no, wrong show.
Fair.
But at the same time, the world building was excellent, which is why I want to give it like a 6.5. So, you know what?
Yeah, that's rough, buddy.
I'll give it a 5.5. We'll go in the middle.
Yeah, compromise.
Slightly above average, because the parts Mando is in really brought the score up because it was that excellent, and the pacing was good. I like how it slowed down. It just doesn't belong here. So final score will be 5.5.
Nice. All right, Tykoth.
Yeah, I'm gonna go really high. I'm gonna go with a 9, because if you ask me right now what I'm in the mood to watch, emotional turmoil within a Star Wars universe or Mandalorian, I'm probably always gonna pick And so even though while I totally understand, I can grasp why people wouldn't like it, why they would rate it so low. For me, I just personally enjoy that type of content. Yeah, it's weird, it's wacky, and
for some reason, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I think he's just gonna give 9s on everything.
I gave a 9.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, okay, that's good. That's good. So it's going down. It's going down slightly.
He's like, does it say Star Wars on the title? Yes. 9 out of 10.
I mean, I've said before, I am a Star Wars slut. Like, I'll just take everything.
Fair. All right, last but not least, Kalina.
All right, I don't like giving numbered ratings because I'm very bad at it. But I would say, had this episode been 2 separate things, the Mandalorian parts and the non-Mandalorian parts, high score. I'd give them high scores if they were separate, but they're together.
Right.
So I must rate them accordingly. I give it I'm gonna say a 3 out of 10.
Whoa!
Because that's about as much time as the Mandalorian got compared to the rest of the show.
You share the same sentiments I do.
Yes.
Except I'm a little bit more into the world building and the lore and the storytelling part. So
I mean, I enjoy it.
Yeah, but
if I'm rating this episode for being a part of this show, rating this episode for the episode of The Mandalorian, I think low score. If it's the episode separate, then it'd be better.
If I was rating this episode according to my all-time favorite movie, Persona, by Ingmar Bergman, it would be a 2. But But like nothing even touches that movie, so that's I have to rate it differently.
Hold on, let me think. Compared to my ratings of during COVID when I watched all of the Disney Channel original movies, it would be. Oh, hold on.
Come on.
It is above Frenemies because that movie is terrible and has no plot, but it is similar because it is 3 stories that have nothing to do with each other. Put together, and now I'm at a 3. So I guess it's a 4.
Just please,
3.5.
Just please tell me you're putting it above Luck of the Irish.
No, it's below Luck of the Irish. Luck of the Irish
It's below Luck of the Irish.
Dude, an old man gets changed into a basketball hoop. Who doesn't want to watch people play basketball? An old man is changing the basketball hoop.
I'm sure High School Musical is above.
And there's a car chase.
Oh yeah, she loves High School Musical.
Oh my goodness, High School Musical.
All right, we're done with that. We're done with that.
Okay.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more talk and discussion at later dates, and I'm excited for next week. Okay, one last thing before we go for real. What do you think next episode's going to be? Like, what's going to be about?
Hopefully Bo-Katan.
Oh, I think it'll focus in really hard on Bo-Katan and the cult of Mandos.
Well, every time we try to think based off of the end of the episode, we're wrong.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's what they want us to think. So I'm going to go left field and say IG-11.
I think, hands down, all bets, full, like, all in. It's going to be another Pershing episode.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it.
It's going to be just all about what happened to him after that. We're going to get hardly any Mando again.
I would be so mad.
What if it's like a Groundhog Day kind of thing, and it's just the same thing over again?
Dude, I'd be so mad. So mad, dude. Oh, jeez. All right. Well, with that, guys, thank you all for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. I know we did. It's been quite a discussion. And we'll see you guys next week. Hopefully earlier. This last episode 2 was released. But yeah, we'll be seeing you guys next week for episode 4. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.